Hello, my name is Abram Kane, and today I spoke with a professor out at EWU. His name is Chad Pritchard, and he came in to speak about the PFAS and PFOA contamination in the West Plains Aquifer. Here is what he has to say.
So PFAS and PFOA are the most common constituents or types of PFAS, polyfluorinated alkaline substances, a whole class of different chemicals that were made to be polyfluorinated. So as opposed to having a carbon chain with hydrogen on there, like most carbon-based things, this has fluorine smashed onto that carbon chain, and it makes it really water repellent. So you find it in Gore-Tex and Teflon, Tyvek, you find it in Scotchgard, Armor all that stuff is like basically Teflon. It used to be ski wax. But in our area, we find it a lot in this firefighting foam, AFFF, aqueous foam forming film that's used in firefighting. And the problem is that with that PFAS, the fluorine in there, it's what we call an endocrine disruptor, so it'll destroy your metabolism, it destroys your liver. Well, not maybe destroy, but it negatively affects your liver and your metabolism, and it can cause cancer and birth defects and things like that. It can happen a lot of places. I mean, if it's in Gore-Tex, it's in our bodies, but in our area, the most dense zones that we find it are associated with the airports, so Fairchild Air Force Base and Spokane International Airport, and that's because that AFFF foam is used to put out really high temperature flames, so jet fuel flames essentially is why it was created in the first place for aircraft carriers and things like that. And so people would practice with it, and then if it rains, that just rushes it off and it infiltrates in the ground, and that comes into our groundwater. And so we find very, very high levels just right next to the base and just north of International Airport. And we have groundwater results that's very hot in both places. Yeah, so it has pretty much well been documented that it causes liver issues, especially as you ingest it. It's that carbon with fluorine, but there's also a hydroxyl, like an OH, oxygen, like almost like water attached to it, and that allows it to dissolve in water, and so it can get through your body through ingestion. So usually eating or drinking the groundwater is a really common way to get it. Dermal is not too bad. I think there's been papers that I've seen. And then the other thing that happens, there is plenty of studies that show that this will be uptaken by roots and into plants as well. And so it is in a lot of people's body, if not everybody's. Fairchild or Air Force Base area, they had a big test and it skyrocketed in their blood. So right now the biggest one they use is granular activated carbon. So like a Brita filter on steroids essentially. And so that's able to filter out these chains of PFAS. You can also use reverse osmosis, but that takes the bad stuff and then just puts it in the sewer. And that's not what we necessarily want to happen to PFAS. So the GAC filters is what they call it. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a fun one. So right now, the Federal Air Force, the Air Force Department of Defense is causing, 70 parts per trillion is what they consider to be contaminated. So anybody that's below 70 parts per trillion, so that's a lot of zeros after it, the 9 is a billion, so you add 3 more. So anybody that's below that doesn't get a filter. So if you live in the Fairchild area, you can get a filter if it's above 70 parts per million. And they'll sample out to Hayford Road, essentially. And so everybody east of Hayford Road that has PFAS in their well, they have to pay for the sampling and then also filtration for it. So they're starting to talk to the Air Force Base right now. And then the EPA is coming out next month, and they're going to sample everybody's water well for free, if they'd like to, that are east of Hayford and out of that Fairchild zone. But you were talking about something. Oh, the standards. So the state standards, though, are 10 to 15 parts per trillion. Okay. So anything that like below that then is considered okay for right now, and they can buy filtered water with that. There's a grant coming out from Department of Health to pay for filters for those people east. If EPA it comes through, it'll be 4 parts per trillion if that's signed into the Clean Water Act, which is supposed to happen in March, but it's supposed to be happening for years. So that means that both places that we're testing right now, all of a sudden people that weren't contaminated would all of a sudden become contaminated. So it's a little confusing in there. So 4 parts per trillion is like a drop of water in 20 Olympic pools, which is a ridiculous metaphor in its own right. But yeah, if it gets down to 4 parts per trillion, we'll find it all over the place. We've tested rain around the world, not me, but we've tested rain from NOAA on Rambo Road, and we're waiting for those results. But it's usually about 4 parts per trillion in the rain. So it's like in our hydrologic cycle now. We've been using it since the 70s. So it's in our rivers, our lakes. Yeah, so the Fairchild Air Force Base already has a standard like set up. So they're testing people and providing filtration. A pretty big GAC systems, the activated carbon filters. The EPA, we had a newspaper article in the Seattle, what's the Seattle Times, I guess, It was on the front page about like the West Plains from Eastern Washington, and that got EPA's attention. And so now they're out here sampling and paying for up to 300 wells. And then anybody that misses that in the West Plains and is not part of the Fairchild study, we'll pay for their testing from a grant from Ecology. Oh, that's a can of worms. So yeah, we've made, PFAS is not the only chemical that we've made that we think is safe for a little while and potentially could have issues. And we also find caffeine, estrogen, from coffee or birth control pills in the hydrosphere as well. So I don't know what's going to happen next. I do generally suggest filter your water. I do know that municipal water also is tested very regularly. We have our own Scott Duncan as our public works director, phenomenal person, is very, very dedicated to testing Craig Road and Len Road, both of our wells. I think there's 4 of them altogether. But yeah, so if you are in a private well, I would recommend some sort of filtration, and then hopefully there'll be some support. And the reason there's support is because they didn't contaminate their well, right? I mean, that was from some sort of another source, be it an airport or something else. Yeah. And so there'll be funds either from that or from the state or federal government to pay for filtration. But yeah, the groundwater is a pretty big issue. So if you want to become a geologist, it's an issue that's going to become bigger and bigger in the world. Quantity and quality are huge issues, not only in the West Plains, but around the world. Yeah, so we do a geo walk around the lake 4 times a year just with the Spokane County Library, and we sample the water and pick up trash and stuff. The next one will be April 13th at the Spokane Library. But this project is $500,000 essentially from Department of Ecology, and so I'd like to bring in as many students as possible. So you can email me, cpritchard@ewu.edu or Eastern Washington University. I'm a city council member as well in city council here, so you can just Google Chad Pritchard. Email me if you're interested. We'll go sample surface water like streams, lakes. We'll sample Medical Lake, Silver Lake, and then we'll go out and test our municipal wells. We'll also test our wastewater treatment facility at multiple places, and then just wells out there. We'll probably sample on Sunday afternoons and Mondays and Tuesdays for the most part. But yeah, I'd love to have help from Medical Lake High School students and the community. Thank you.